Hello and a warm welcome from the Money Majlis studio in Dubai. Thank you for joining me for another cracking episode of your favorite podcast on banking, technology, leadership, and marketing. Today's guest is the worldwide financial services head of Microsoft. But before I introduce him to you, I just want to thank all those listeners who find the time to visit my giving website, give.moneymajlis.com every fortnight to redeem your free $50 gift card for a charity of your choice. As you know, this season of Money Majlis is not just about having consequential conversations, but also about creating social impact. As such, all profits, yes, 100% of the profits that I make from every episode go into worthwhile causes from this region and from across the world. I have chosen 6 charities for this season that benefit from the profits of this podcast. These are Dubai Cares, Red Crescent, Global Fund for Women, Jaipur Foot, World Central Kitchen, and the Orangutan Conservancy. In every episode, my guest gets a $1,000 gift card that he or she chooses to donate to one of these 6 causes. And for every episode, 50 listeners get a $50 gift card to donate. You just have to visit give.moneymajlis.com and click on the charity of your choice to donate $50. The money from my sponsors will go straight into the charity on your behalf. It's that simple. So please remember to visit my website and join me in making a difference to someone somewhere. Thank you. Time now to introduce you to my sponsors. I will see you on the other side of this commercial break.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto-as-a-service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is brought to you by E&, a global technology group.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Intellect Design Arena, driving digital adoption in banking and insurance.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Live Digital Bank, powered by Emirates NBD. Trust and innovation combined.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
Now to today's episode of Money Majlis. My guest today is Bill Borden, Corporate Vice President of Worldwide Financial Services at Microsoft. Bill Borden leads the development and execution of Microsoft's global industry strategy to support its banking, capital markets, and insurance customers in their digital transformation journeys and accelerate innovation and growth. As Microsoft's thought leader in financial services, Bill came to the company with a distinguished 20-plus year career in the industry, serving in various senior leadership positions at some of the largest banking institutions in the United States. These include Bank of America and Citigroup. Bill holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from Cornell University and a Master of Business Administration degree from the Northwestern University Kellogg School of Management. Bill Borden is committed to helping the communities in which he lives and works through board membership, volunteering, and mentoring. He currently serves on the boards of SoFi and Hub and is a member of the Executive Leadership Council, the preeminent membership organization for the development of global Black leaders. He and his wife reside in Martha's Vineyard. Bill is on a business visit to Dubai, where Microsoft has many significant corporate customers in financial services and has been present for 30 years of its 50-year history. Welcome back to Dubai. Let me ask you, what do you like most about Dubai as a city, Bill?
Well, first of all, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to join you on the show. So it's a pleasure, and meeting the godfather of finance in the Dubai area is amazing. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. It is an amazing city to come to, amazing part of the world to come to. First time I came to Dubai was in 2006.
Wow.
When I was working for Citi, and at the time we had a executive brigade come out here talking to the region, and I was seeing the maps of the vision of how they were laying out the cities in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi, and to come again in 2017 and see the progress, and then come again in 7 years, 8 years later in 25, the progress is amazing. So to see the vibrancy of the city, to see the vision that I saw back in 2006 actually come together and take shape around creating a environment where it's inclusive, where many, many backgrounds and people are accepted, and it's part of the culture. The idea of forward thinking around where you can take societies and advancement and creating opportunities and wealth and creating an economy that flourishes for everyone. It's just amazing to see it. There's an energy here, right, that you feel.
Absolutely.
And the sunshine is always good, right?
Absolutely. So let me start, Bill, with a very broad question. Microsoft recently completed 50 years since it was founded on 4th of April 1975. So it's just been earlier this month that you completed 50 years. But it was founded by Bill Gates and Paul Allen, famously, to build software for microcomputers. You were part of the 50th celebrations in ringing the bell, the opening bell at NASDAQ. Congratulations. And here's wishing the company a very successful next 50 years. As head of the worldwide financial services business for the company, tell us how the business for your division has been shaping up in the last few years, and what are some of the exciting things that we can look forward to for Microsoft?
Yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for the congratulations on the celebration. And to be a part of celebrating that history, ringing the bell on NASDAQ, representing the company, was an amazing experience. Adina Friedman, the CEO of NASDAQ, was there with us celebrating. They had a big celebration in Times Square, and it was exciting. It was also a day where the three CEOs came together, right? You had Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and now Satya all together, right, on campus in Redmond celebrating with Microsoft as well. So it was an amazing day and an event. And incredible because we're kind of the old men of technology, right? Being 50 years. And the incredible stability of Microsoft and its desire to continue to change the world with technology and create a platform for change makers to build on that technology, right? That vision of having a PC in every home that took place, and then now where we are today with our cloud computing, which gives access and the democratization of access to technology again to serve our mission, right? To empower every individual and organization on the planet to achieve more, is still striving and strong as well. And from a financial services perspective, being a leader of that industry, my job with my team coming from industry, as you described, is to bring the voice of financial services, banking, capital markets, and insurance to Microsoft to ensure that we're building the capabilities in our cloud structures that are going to be fit for purpose for this industry. It's highly regulated. Security, compliance, controls are a big part of what we have to do in our cloud services for this industry. We work very closely with our partner organization for all the software providers that build first-party solutions for the industry that want to build on our technology platform. And so we spend a lot of time with those groups, the mature organizations, as well as the up-and-coming fintechs that are building on our platforms. And then how do we take our technology plus our partners plus our industry expertise as a team and work with our enterprise sales forces to serve our customers with not just technology, but the idea of the businesses that they're in and how they're trying to create value. And then you marry up our vision, empowering people and organizations with the financial industry's mission, which is providing inclusive capabilities, right, to allow individuals or companies to actually meet their financial needs and have the financial wherewithal and the security around insurance to actually do business and to create GDP and economic growth. The two missions together, it's super exciting to lead that together. So we are a big part of the financial community globally. And we spend a lot of time in this region as well, helping this region in the UAE build on its vision, right, around being a hub of innovation, and particularly a hub of innovation in financial services.
Bill, I have been a diehard user of Microsoft products, both at work and at home. But there are critics who say that Microsoft has outlived its vision and that it does not have the bite of new age tech companies. What's your comment on that?
I think that's borne out in everything that we do, right? In terms of what we've done and the fact that we still At one point in time, it was the most valuable company in the world. And we, depending on the market day, we're there. But I think our focus around that broad mission, empowering people, individuals, companies, and governments with our technology is still tried and true. We're very proud of our mission and our culture and our approach to doing that. We've always had a vision around how we want to use technology for good. How do you build and leverage technology in ways that are safe and secure and compliant? We've taken that from the era of being the platform provider on the PC, where we generated industries of all kinds, right? Where every dollar we made in the PC environment, our partners were making 6. So now take that forward to the cloud computing, and the ability to have ubiquitous cloud and network and data capabilities around the world that people can take advantage of. We are a leader in doing that and building data centers around the world so that available compute technology is there. And now, as we've built on and moved through AI, now the idea of making AI available and making it available in safe and secure ways and doing that on a global basis, we are on the cutting edge of that. And you've seen that with our early partnerships with OpenAI. But you've also seen that with our development and investment in our data centers around the world, investing in skilling and education and development around the world, and putting frameworks in the world to think about how do we use this technology in a safe, sound, and secure way. So we're a leading edge in that. We're a leading edge in terms of talking with companies, talking with governments, and helping shape this next wave of technology, right, that's going to be solely focused on the value of what you can create with generative AI.
Now, this is the Dubai AI Week that we are in at this point, and Microsoft has been an investor and frontrunner in this space for many years, especially the launch of Copilot that you did with OpenAI in early 2023. Tell me, Bill, how do you see adoption of AI, Gen AI especially, in banks, fintechs, and insurers globally? I mean, you go across the world and evaluate use cases. What are the use cases that are seeing a lot of traction? And where in the hype cycle are we now?
Sure, and you mentioned the hype cycle. There's always a lot of hype, right, when new technologies come out, whether it was in the internet days or in the mobile days. The idea of how fast a pace that this technology has been recognized, understood, and used around the world is incredible, right? The amount of people that are using OpenAI or reusing OpenAI around the world, getting to 100 million users in a month. So that the touching and the feeling of what it can do, the world has seen it and now feels it and has used it. Everybody's using it every day. So we've been taking a very structured approach to how we actually want to offer the capabilities in our product sets. And if you think about 18 months ago or the beginning of 2023, right, when we first announced our partnership with OpenAI and then started bringing large language models into our products, we started in the browser, and now we've been building it into our products. And we brought this idea of a copilot, right? The idea of humans plus technology, right? And humans collaborating with AI to actually do their work and rethink their work. And so this idea of copilot, we actually started thinking about it, and we started in the developer space. When we launched GitHub Copilot first as our first copilot for developers, where we really saw dramatic increases in the ability to create code and test it and to modify it. And the productivity gains of 30, 40, 50%. So that model around the developer community is what we took forward to thinking about copilots more broadly for all of our users. And so this first phase of thinking about humans with assistance, right? Not the pilot, but actually the copilot. So humans in control, the idea of machine learning and intelligence plus human judgment is the value proposition that we've been building into our product sets and bringing to the market. And so think about it. When I was in Davos in January of 24, talking to banking institutions, it was all about, hey, how do we test and learn? Is this real? Is it safe? Is it secure? Can we manage it in our environment? Can we do it in a compliant way? Fast forward to January of 25 at Davos, financial institutions weren't talking about if, it was about when. Microsoft, help us think about how we scale, help us think about how we change, how we can think about our business operations using this technology, and help us think about how we do it from the long run in a safe and secure manner. So now the financial services industry is actually viewed as an industry that's kind of leading edge right around thinking about use cases.
Really?
The industry itself has always used machine learning, particularly around fraud and pattern matching around credit and those types of things. But now the ability to engage with the technology in natural language and actually have it reason and actually help solve problems is super, super interesting. And we just put out our workforce trends report for 2025. So I will get you a copy of it because it really talks about the impact around work, and what this is going to mean for work. And what it's going to mean for work, not only from the standpoint of individual productivity, but how businesses need to think about how they shape their organizations. And so fundamentally, we're in this position of saying, if I can now have a assistant with every human being, what does that mean? And so out of the workplace trends, I think it was 82% of the leaders in that report have committed to saying that they will be using digital labor in the next 10 to 12 months. 46% of the respondents and the leaders said that they've already modernized or automated a process using an agent. And then another 78% of the respondents, leaders, have said that they're already looking for how they're going to hire AI talent. So the idea of thinking about how to use AI and agents in an agentic way is really forefront on the boardrooms around the world.
So when you look at usage or use cases of AI by financial institutions, is your recommendation that banks try lots of use cases or just bet on a few?
Use cases, that's not the issue. Banks and many institutions have hundreds, thousands of use cases, and that's where a lot of work has been over the last 18 months. I would say the successful organizations have determined fundamentally how they're going to use the technology, how they're going to organize it around it in terms of their structures, right, around their technology, their business organizations, compliance, risk, security groups, around how they're going to have centers of excellence to think about how they manage the use of the technology. But then they're focusing in on very specific use cases. And I would say some that have been talked about quite a lot in our public are, as I mentioned earlier, in the area of the DevOps environment, right? So you've got Citi and others that have talked about publicly how I think Citi has like 40,000 users using GitHub Copilot in their development ops space. So think about using it in 4 areas. One, around empowering the employee work groups across front, middle, and back office. And so you've had institutions like UBS rolling out 50,000 copilots to their population or organization around workforce productivity. You've had institutions like Wells Fargo building assistance for servicing representatives in the branch. And they've talked about taking actions that would take 10 minutes or more and doing it in 30 seconds. You've got companies like Investec in Europe, an asset management investment company, talking about taking 2 hours or 2 hours a year savings per investment manager because of the technology they've been using around their copilots that they're building internally. So you're seeing it on the productivity side. On the customer side, you're also seeing the use of the technology to make customer engagements better. I would say it's more inward using in terms of externally facing with customers. So the idea of assistants helping relationship manager or bankers bring better insights and better knowledge to their customers or their business partners. The idea of a service person actually understanding how to solve a problem, but then also bring additional actions and capabilities because of what they know about the customer that's going to be meaningful and intentional for that customer to actually respond to. And that's what's going to be expected, right? Because we're all using the technology ourselves. So we're going to expect the institutions that are serving us to actually have know us well, know us in all the channels, and actually bring insights that are really bringing value to us.
That's a very good point, actually. When we started our careers, me 40 years back, often what we used in the institution was far ahead of what we use at home, right? Today it's very different, right? Individuals use probably higher technology at home and more advanced versions of what they do than they when to come to work, right? So how do corporates keep up with the technology that the individual is using in his personal life?
Yeah, and I think that's the point, right? I think the idea of employee productivity, changing and reimagining the customer experience, rethinking what your business processes are today, not automating what you have today, but rethinking them, and then trying to bend the innovation curve. Those are the 4 areas that we talk about with our customers. And that's where you're seeing the specificity of where institutions are really starting to focus on priorities around value creation. And that gets into our Work Trends 25 Index report that we talk about too. It's really focused on the frontier firm or how businesses are going to change in their operating models if you think about workflow. So if this first phase is with workers plus assistants getting their work done, The second phase being agents being a part of your teams. So inviting agents into your teams to do collaboration work together.
Right.
And then the third phase of this is really the idea of humans setting direction and then having agents go off and do the work in an automated way. And when you think about your workflow in that way around the idea of on-demand information and language and knowledge being available, that's kind of, it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Plus the idea of a digital plus human workforce, you're going to think about how you're going to have to restructure your business because you're going to have to get to scale faster.
Yeah.
You're going to have to operate with agility, and you're going to have to create value at a faster pace if you're going to outrun your competition. And so institutions are going to have to think about not just using this technology to, automate what you're doing today, but fundamentally reshape how you might bring banking and capability services to customers.
I am a heavy user of Microsoft Word, but I never tried Copilot till very recently, a few months back. So I was hoping to write a script on promoting my season 2 of my podcast, Money Majlis. And I had a brief in mind of what I wanted to create, a 1.5-minute video on different social media channels. I said, what the hell? We click on the Copilot tab, which I did. And I put the brief in. I said, let's see what it comes up with. It came up with a 1.5-minute script, scene by scene by scene. What is the long shot? What is the close up? Where should music come in? Should I be on camera? Should I be off camera? I was very impressed. I hadn't expected this to happen. Actually, I used the script 95% of the way. Yeah, and my season 2 was started back in February this year. And I used that Copilot script to actually promote and with my studio, Podster, to create a video and actually promote that on social media. So the first time I used it, I fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm. No, it's amazing what it can do in a short period of time to reason and bring back information. But you mentioned that then you had to take it and kind of tweak it and tailor it yourself. And again, that's the idea of using the technology to very quickly come back with something of value and then you being able to add your judgment on top of it. And the cool thing about it is as you continue to use it, it actually, particularly in the enterprise environment, it starts to kind of understand because you're now the three things of 1, the natural language processing, 2, the reasoning engine, but 3, the technology being able to actually manage and remember the prompts that you have and the questions that you've asked it. And so as that technology builds behind this, now it can actually not just reason on the question that you answered, but now it's looking at history around, and now it's starting to kind of learn you and your personal style, right, and the types of questions that you have. So that's the really interesting and amazing thing about it. And the usability of it is what makes it really interesting and unique because now everyone's going to be thinking about what agents they can build that can do tasks and very specific things. And so this notion of, hey, I can ask and interface in a natural language way my question, that natural language model might do something specific, but I may want to get something even more specific, right? I may want to get some specific data, right? If I'm a trader, right? From Refinitiv or Reuters or Bloomberg, right? And so you're gonna start to see the industry create new ways of providing additional information to bring to that natural language query that you just did. And so the idea of how you manage your initial prompting that you do, but then also what the industry is going to do behind it to actually give you more information and more specific agents to actually allow you to do your work. That's what's really interesting. And then you can start thinking about how you personalize this for each persona or group in your organization, right? So you might have something specific for the HR function. So what queries are available to you, what agents, what data structures, what information, what applications are available to you. I can do the same thing for a finance persona. I can do the same thing for a trader, or I can do the same thing for a relationship banker. And so the industry itself is trying to think about what is going to be kind of that interface and how do I coordinate all of this in a way that one is provides productivity in the work through that and the value creation we're trying to do, but also managing it in an enterprise environment where you can manage the technology as it changes at the pace that it's changing.
So maybe that's what's going to become of AI, where you don't worry about how it did what it did, but just use the results.
Well, you want to have transparency and you want to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And institutions that are using these models are going to have the governance and the lineage and the transparency around how the reasoning was done and what data sets that it's used. So particularly in financial services where you're a regulated entity, just like you have done in the past for all these years with machine learning models associated with how they used and how you needed to represent and understand what was happening around the reasoning to actually talk to your regulators around how you're using this technology. It's going to be the same thing with AI. So you're going to have traceability and usability. And that's one of the things that we're spending a lot of time on as we think about the development stack around how you use this technology and the guardrails for how you use it and how you manage things and how you limit hallucinations and how you try to get at the appropriate answers in the right way. There's a lot of work behind the scenes structurally around how that's being done.
Especially if you're doing credit modeling and stuff like that.
That's right.
Make sure there's no bias, right?
Yes. And that, look, this isn't new from the standpoint of, hey, we're just thinking about how to use technology in a safe and sound and secure way, right? We've been doing this at Microsoft with the advent of technology. So our researchers and engineering teams around using technology in a responsible way, we're extending what we've been doing for the last 50 years into how we're actually looking at how we develop with AI as well. And so that's a big part of it. But what's really interesting is the models, right? So obviously lots of publicity around DeepSeek, right? Around how you had a model that came out and did things very quickly without using GPUs and obviously on a lower cost structure economic base, coming up with very credible and interesting answers. So this idea of managing models and which models do you use, large language, medium language, even small language models that run on mobile devices and PCs, that's going to be part of the architecture that institutions are going to be using, right? So you may have a use case today. If I'm a relationship banker and I'm using a large language model to give me answers around how I should best serve based on the products I should offer a customer, the models behind that are going to keep changing. So the key to the architecture is going to be is how do you have a structure that allows you to use the appropriate models with the appropriate economics to serve your use case?
Correct.
Because models are going to change.
Right. But wearing your financial services hat at Microsoft, do you think the future for banks is small language models, which are more attuned to financial services, versus going to an ocean of LLM? What is the future?
I think the future is the ability to determine which are the best models from an economic point of view to get the decisions that you need, either based on time or value or where you want to run that model, right? If it's on a mobile device or PC, you're going to have to use small language models or medium language models. Can you do that? And the answer is yes. We're proving that out. So the architectural answer is going to be, how do I manage the use of those models given the use cases that I have? And as new models come out, how do I actually have an infrastructure that allows me to have those new models plugged in quickly? So with our Azure OpenAI services and our Foundry services where we manage models, when we launched that and really started talking about that last fall, we had a couple hundred models available. Now we have 1,000+ models available. When DeepSeek came out, we actually had that model in our library in 3 days. So that's the whole idea right around as models keep coming out and keep getting better, how do you actually continue to have the infrastructure to move those models in or to take advantage of them? And so that's a big part of the development stack that we're working on.
Bill, you recently launched what is called the Financial Meeting Prep app in partnership with the London Stock Exchange to help client-facing staff equip themselves better for meetings. Tell us a bit more about the evolution of agentic AI. We referred to it earlier in the conversation. What will it mean for customers in the future, apart from bank staff? Will we see an evolution like a Star Wars, C-3PO, where, the C-3PO is programmed for etiquette and protocol and apparently knows 7 million forms of communication and has been a constant companion to, R2-D2. Will we all have agentic companions for each of us in the future?
I believe we will have the ability to have companions and different companions based on what we actually want to get done. And you have that today, right? Microsoft's M365 Copilot is your companion in the enterprise workforce, where you can use Copilot as a consumer. You can download it on your phone. And it is your ability to ask it questions and to reason with you and get answers very quickly. And so you have the foundations of those assistants with you today that are much more knowledgeable, right, around what we're doing, right? And even if you think about how chatbots had been used in financial services institutions, right, where they were kind of asking questions, but they're pretty structured and pretty limiting in sometimes the answers because you weren't really talking within a natural language. And a lot of people think chatbots are kind of not great.
Yeah.
But now everybody's revamping their chatbots using generative AI technology because now you can build in natural language processing into it. And as a consumer, you can actually interact with it and it can actually reason over much more information and give you back answers that are much more usable and valuable to the users and the customers and the businesses using them. So that's a way today where institutions have actually completely raised the game right around the value creation around what those chatbots were doing. So we have it today. We have it in our Copilot approach, whether that Copilot is a knowledge worker Copilot M365 or GitHub Copilot today, or we have security Copilots for our security applications and capabilities. So yes, you will have Copilots, and they're going to get smarter and they're going to get better. And back to that comment I made earlier about work trends, if you're running a business, right, and you're thinking about how I can continue to operate quickly with agility, if my competitors are going to have copilots that are assisting their employees, and they're going to have agents that are allowing them to collaborate better and work better, and they're going to have agents that are going to allow them to reshape their business processes, I better be thinking about how I'm going to compete with that environment because the technology is there.
Yes, of course. Now tell me, in the pre-AI world, I would use, let's say, a TripAdvisor to book my holidays.
Yeah.
And I'll use, say, Yahoo Finance to look at stocks that I want to invest in. In the AI world, will there be different copilots for finance, for stock picking, different copilot for travel bookings, a different copilot for, whatever else that I want to do? Is that what is going to be the future? Multiple agents?
The answer is yes. There will be multiple agents that do specific things. And think of copilots as the assistant, right, to you or the human, right, actually allowing you to engage in asking questions and prompting.
Yep.
Think of agents as automating business processes and workflows. And so what we're all learning in this early stages of generative AI is how those two things are going to operate and work together. And so to your point, will it be I have to go to separate things like I go to separate websites today to do things? Or is my Copilot going to be able to reason over those websites that you just referred to, whether it was Yahoo Finance or Expedia or whatever? Can the Copilot do that for me? Will I have agents that connect with those sources that I like and choose and actually have already autonomously gone out and gotten information for me? Because earlier I said in the week I was going to plan a trip. So my agent went off to my preferred sites and I actually got that information. And then when I was ready to engage with my Copilot, the information was already there. That's what we're all starting to think through and learn about around how this is going to come together.
You mentioned earlier about the fact that if my competitor is using Copilot or agentic AI for customer service, then I better do the same because they will beat me in terms of response times or quality of service or whatever KPIs that I measure. But tell me, in the next 5 years, if every bank, every institution started using Copilot equivalent to Copilot, whatever, agentic AI, won't all service look the same? How will I differentiate in a world of, agentic AIs? Will all the programming not lead to the same kind of solutions, and therefore I lose my differentiation as a brand?
Well, think about it, right? With the internet age, every institution had to now pivot towards offering your services online on a computer, right? Yep. All the financial institutions had to pivot towards, right, how do I offer my services in an internet space, right? Mm-hmm. I had to create my website. I could create how I was going to create the functionality. I had to create my services around it. Every institution did that in a way that they thought was going to be the most competitive and the most opportunistic way to serve their customers. They still had their branding. They still had their approach, but I would suffice to say that there's varying degrees of how people view and measure the importance of those websites. And there's probably a broad range of consumers who say some are good and some are bad. But you had to compete on that platform, right?
Yep.
Same thing with mobile. when mobile came out, institutions had to think about, hey, how do we start using this technology? How are we going to brand it? How are we going to offer these services, again, in a safe and secure way?
Yep.
Everybody instituted mobile banking in different ways. And again, you had to compete on that platform. It's going to be the same thing now with generative AI and how generative AI is going to be infused in your products and the way you deliver your services. It's another platform that you're going to have to compete on and create your branding and your value proposition and how you're going to use it to restructure and create value in a rapid way, in a structured way to your populations that you want to serve.
You're saying differentiation will still exist in the way that people implement the solutions. Now, you are, as Microsoft, helping two of the largest banks in the region with AI journeys. Are you seeing the approaches being quite different between banks of how they adopt AI?
Yes, because every institution is different, just like people, right? Their cultures are different, their backgrounds are different, their systems are different, their views around where they want to focus and prioritize are different. So as they're operating differently in the market today, creating value against their brands, now they have a new set of technologies that they're trying to figure out how they want to leverage to, again, differentiate themselves and create value. So yes, they're all going to decide what areas do they want to focus on. There's going to be some common areas, right, around where you can take cost out, right, where you have large groups of people doing things. You're going to focus where you can actually take cost out and take manual labor out and create efficiencies and productivity. But on the customer value creating opportunities, it's going to be really interesting to see how those mobile interfaces and how those web interfaces change now to actually offer new services with generative AI infused. I'm really excited to see what happens. And I think in this market in particular, because of the innovation future-looking view, I'm excited to see some of the ideas that they're going to come out with around how this technology is going to change how they operate, how they serve their products, how they provide service, but more importantly, how they treat us to actually help us in our financial lives, right? Because that's the whole idea, right? They should be helping us as a business owner, or as an individual. How can I do better to achieve my goals with their financial services and products? And I'm excited to see what kinds of things they're going to come up with to do that.
But Bill, if you look at 2 or 3 decades back, when, let's say, Citibank or a Bank of America or a JP Morgan in the US had deeper pockets to spend on technology and had probably better technology than a small regional bank in the Midwest in the US. So there was a differentiation that was based on technology, based on what you had at the back end to provide probably a higher level of service to a customer. As technology costs plummet down, and as every bank gets to use the same kind of agentic AI going forward, I'm assuming this cost will keep going down, will differentiation become a bigger issue, a bigger problem, bigger challenge in the future? You agree with that?
Yes, I think anytime there's a new technology wave, the competition and the competitive view around how you're going to use that technology, there's going to be some common things, but there's going to be some outliers around how they provide the service, how they charge the service, or how they think creatively around new products that they're going to offer around that. I think is always going to be the game. Everybody offers credit cards, but there are certain credit cards that people like because of the value propositions that fit their lifestyles. It's going to be the same thing. You're going to have the ability to be much more specific right around how you want to offer your products, because the expectation is that you're going to have a view of the 360-degree view of data now with your customers. You're going to be able to reason over that data and get insights at a much quicker, faster way. Now, how are banks going to use that to show up in how they interface and engage with customers or come up with new products and services around lending or credit, or the approach to having the right products and services show up in my life stage when they should happen if I'm an individual serving a bank. And think about what's happened, right? Remember, well, you know very well, right? Remember 10, 15 years ago, everybody thought the fintechs were going to take the big banks down, take over banking.
They don't happen.
Because they had access to technology and they had the ability to actually create new products and services. And they did create new ways of thinking about banking and servicing and the integration of solutions and having a view of customers and partners that were much more insightful. But the larger institutions learned and actually provided similar things. So
they made the banks better.
They made the banks better, actually. I think they did. And obviously, many of those firms got bought by the banks, too. So I think we're going to see a similar thing, because the access to this technology is broad and wide. And as you said, the costs are going to continue to come down around it. So the power of what institutions are going to do to actually create value quickly and to be able to pivot quickly. And again, you know this too, being in banking, right? Remember 10, 15 years ago, how long it would take to get a new feature or function out to the market.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Banks, 10, 20 years ago, would do 1 or 2 or 3 releases a year to get new products out, right? Now the neobanks have shown that you've got to be able to get product out weekly, daily, right?
Yeah.
You're constantly getting new products out. And so the larger institutions have learned how to do that too. Now throw AI into the mix. What's that going to look like? I'm excited to see it.
You handle global markets, Bill, so you see how it's going, moving across the different parts of the world. If you compare, let's say, Asia, Middle East, Europe, and the US, and even South America, do you see a difference in the speed and scale of adoption of AI?
You do. You see it. You see it in pockets where there are regions that have a holistic kind of country view right around the advancement of innovation and technology, and regulatory environments that actually support that ability as well too.
Yeah.
You're going to see, and you've seen it in the past with the internet and with mobile banking and other technologies and cloud computing in particular. You've seen some differences right around the speed and pace that institutions have been able to use the technology, and I would say Asia and India and the Middle East and UAE, even in Africa, where you had to leapfrog the idea of getting to mobile and getting the distribution and the access right to folks that needed banking services. Where we have those types of technology advances, you're going to see, I think, some differences in the pace and change. But the technology itself being cloud-based means that the idea of how you build and the idea of where you can have services and capabilities and the democratization of it is going to make the ability for regional differences to actually close gaps pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So back to my point earlier, I think all regions around the world are going to get pretty competitive right around being able to offer technology and have the capabilities and the technology providers to offer it. I think now it's going to be who will do it quickly, who will learn fast, right around what's got talent. I think there'll be some more risks around first mover advantage. Mm-hmm. I think in financial services, you didn't necessarily, and you know this too, right? Yeah. You didn't necessarily want to be the first mover, right? Correct. You typically wanted to be the second or third mover, right, to take advantage of something. And I think there's going to be some differences around first mover advantage in this space as well too.
Okay, so this is a good time now for a commercial break. Let me take this opportunity to thank my sponsors, E&, Emirates NBD Live, Aqua Now, Network International, and Intellect Design Arena for their unstinting support to Money Majlis. Not only do they help me produce this podcast, voted the best debut podcast in 2024, but they also support my giving movement. As you know, all profits I make from Money Majlis goes into charities, and you can take part in this movement too by just visiting give.moneymajlis.com and clicking on the charity of your choice. A $50 contribution will be made by me to your favorite charity. I'll see you on the other side of the commercial break.
The financial world is changing fast. Institutions need to meet the growing client demand for crypto financial services, but they need a battle-tested platform to build upon.
AquaNow is a leading crypto financial services platform, powering incumbent institutions to launch crypto brokerage, payments, and remittance services for their clients, securely and at scale.
Be part of the transformation. Visit aquanow.com today.
The end touches your life
in more ways than you can imagine.
You want more tech,
more speed,
more convenience, more entertainment, more business solutions. E&, gives you all that and so much more. E&, go for more.
Parents teach their children to talk, to walk, to ride, to read. So why not teach them about managing their money? Introducing the all-new Live Light app, designed to teach 8 to 18-year-olds good money habits. A free and totally secure app designed for them that's always under your control. Top up their cards, set limits, assign tasks, and reward them with allowances. Download the LiveX app to open a Live Light account in minutes, and the first 50 dirham allowance is on us. Visit live.me today. Live Digital Bank by Emirates NBD. Trust and innovation combined. T's and C's apply.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Intellect Design Arena. Intellect drives digital adoption in banking and insurance. Leverage emac.ai, the most comprehensive, composable, and intelligent open finance platform for banking and insurance transformation. Intellect Design Arena.
And touches your life.
In more ways than you can imagine.
You want more tech,
More speed.
more convenience, more entertainment, more business solutions. And gives you all that and so much more. And go for more.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the Middle East, and Africa's digital payments champion. We make business happen and economies prosper by simplifying commerce and payments. Trusted by over 250 banks, fintechs, and telcos, and 130,000 merchants in over 50 countries. Bringing you tomorrow's payment solutions today.
Welcome back to Money Majlis. We are talking to Bill Borden, Global Corporate Vice President of Global Financial Services at Microsoft. Bill, you started your career in the technology space with IBM, consulting, later moving to Citibank, and then Bank of America across different business roles. Before you moved to the technology side with Microsoft in 2019, you have been seeing banks change and transform themselves, led by new technologies and digitization, driven by changes in, say, customer expectations, customer demands, etc. Yet, banks still struggle to use technology or data as well as an Amazon or a Netflix. Having seen both sides of the equation, what advice would you have for banks, and how do you think the technology industry can better equip banks and financial institutions to deliver better customer experiences?
Yeah, I think the financial institutions across banking, capital markets, and insurance are in a position to actually be much more creative around using their technology as they get comfortable with understanding how to manage it in a secure, compliant, and in compliance, obviously, with the regulations, right? These institutions are highly regulated. Safety and soundness and security is a huge part around how they have to operate their businesses and protect their customers. And so, with that part of their business model, right, they have to take things in a paced way to ensure that it's going to function properly and function in a way that works. I think with the movement of cloud computing, which happened over the last 4 or 5 years in earnest in the financial services industry, because this industry was a little bit slow in moving to the cloud. But I think now getting to the cloud has opened up a lot of capabilities and thought processes around how to take advantage of technology. And as you get to moving to the cloud and now thinking about AI, if you're going to be competitive with AI, you have to get your data environments and your data states in a situation where you can reason over them to actually support your AI strategies. And so it's another forcing function for institutions to, again, think about the best ways for their architectures to actually get their data structures corrected in a right way. So they can actually, as you talked about with Amazon and other retail-type companies, have the information, the data, the insights quickly to actually be much more responsive to the needs of the customers and the institutions they're serving. So I think that's happening. I think that's happening in earnest. And I think there's been a couple of accelerants to actually do that. The move to cloud and getting comfortable with cloud around how you do it in your organizations, the engagement with regulatory regimes, right, that you operate in around the world, and the regulators getting comfortable understanding the technology and how to work with institutions around that has helped. Now, I talk about this a lot. I think COVID was actually a big stimulant around how institutions learn how to work. Think about this, right? If you had said in 2019 that the financial services industry, banking, capital markets, and insurance could function with 90+% of its people working at home, you and I would have both said impossible. But it did. And so I point back to, well, how did institutions do that? Well, they still had to come together. They still had to manage risk and compliance and controls, but they got to the heart of what they needed to do. They were able to make decisions fast. They were able to risk accept decisions in a way that they could still, in a responsible way, roll out the ability to work at home with digital technologies and video technologies, et cetera. But we did it, right? And so there's a little bit of a, hey, you're going to need to do some similar things, right, if you're going to want to take advantage of this next wave of transformation in AI, right, to push yourselves around the organization to still manage within your frameworks of security and compliance and controls, but be able to make decisions quickly and learn fast, and be able to do it in a way in partnership with your regulators where you can actually take advantage of this technology. So I do see closing the gap right around feeling like as an institution, right, you can actually have insights and data quickly that's more retail oriented right around decision making. And I do think there are going to be some new ways, and back to your point around the assistant, or am I going to have an R2D2 next to me? You know, imagine if an institution did have a financial coach for you.
Yep.
Right, that was personalized to understanding your environment, that understood all the products and capabilities and what was structured right for you. That would be incredibly exciting. And I think, and there are a lot of institutions that are thinking about it in that way, not just for an individual, but for a business or an institution or a government. So I do think it's going to be really interesting to see kind of the breakthroughs. And I think the push from boards and CEOs, right, to actually have some of those breakthroughs, but again, doing it in a safe and secure and compliant way, is going to happen at a faster pace.
And talking of CEOs, Bill, many progressive CEOs like to say that we are not a bank, but a technology company. Do you think it's humbug, or is that a false claim? And should banks even aspire to be tech companies? I'll leave it to the Microsofts and IBMs of the world.
Varies from institution size and region and country. If you look at it purely from the standpoint of how many developers and engineers that these institutions have, you could easily say that, yes, if the majority of their workforce are developers and engineers, then they're tech companies. But do they have the mindset to actually be a tech company where you are thinking about rapid innovation and understanding the build versus buy kind of approach, right? Tech companies are in the business of building tech to sell to others. And there are some institutions, particularly some of the larger U.S. institutions, that are actually thinking about it in that way, building tech to serve their customers and their businesses, but also thinking about building tech that they can offer to the marketplace for others to use.
Yeah.
And I think those institutions are really thinking about it in a new and unique way around really being a tech company, right, where I'm building the best tech, right? If I'm building the best platform to do mobile banking or to do claims processing or to do asset management to serve my customers, but I can offer that technology to others that want to use it. I think those institutions really are tech companies.
But then the question is, Bill, shouldn't banks focus on what they know best, which is managing customers' money, and leave the tech companies to do the tech? I mean, do banks have to be tech companies, or can they not work with tech companies and get the best tech for their customers?
Oh, well, I think that's a little bit of the pushback around them being pure tech companies, right? If banks are going to still feel like they've got to build everything themselves, then they're not going to be able to compete, in my opinion, right? And so you've got to make decisions around who your partners are going to want to be, and based on the business or the function that you're trying to automate and serve, making that decision around build versus buy, and if I'm going to build, you know, how far down into the tech stack do I want to build? I want to build down at the compute infrastructure layer, or do I want to build at the application layer, or do I want to build at the user interface layer? And so many institutions are making decisions around, wait a minute, all right, I need to work with partners, right, in a way that I can add my value, add my alpha on top of their technology, right, that they're going to continue to pour, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars in, and how do I take advantage of that?
Right.
And that's actually where we're getting pushed a lot as an institution in the financial markets ecosystem space, right? We have a lot of companies talking to us saying, hey, look, Microsoft, you're pretty ubiquitous on the desktop, right? You've got Excel and PowerPoint and Office.
Yeah.
So why don't we think about building our capabilities on top of that in terms of creating value for our employees and our customers? Microsoft, you're becoming pretty ubiquitous at the collaboration layer with Teams.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of our institutions and our partner institutions and our organizations that we do business with, we can now communicate within organizations and we can communicate externally. So why don't we kind of think about building on top of that in terms of our capabilities? Microsoft, you are a cloud computing platform that many of us use. You have a data platform that many of us use, and you're building out. So a lot of institutions are pushing us to be very clear and play as a trusted platform provider to serve the industry.
Yep.
And then a lot of institutions are thinking about how do they build on top of that. That was the reason behind our long-term relationship with London Stock Exchange that we announced a couple of years ago, where they want to take their data analytic products, move them into the cloud, offer them to their customer in new and unique different ways, but they also want their assets to show up in the Microsoft platform, right? Show up in the desktop, show up in the collaboration layer, show up in the data layer. And now you have many institutions pushing us, if we can be that trusted platform, they would much rather build their alpha on top of it. And so we're getting pushed a lot in terms of that direction, and it's exciting to be in that in the conversations we're having to help shape our platforms that institutions are willing to have with us.
Got it. So, Bill, we're sitting in Dubai. So let's move to this region now. The UAE is aspiring to be a global player, as you well know, in AI development, with the national strategy aimed at developing talent and growing industries that will help the country probably become one of the world leaders in AI by 2030, 2031. The UAE has appointed, a Minister of State for AI, digital economy and remote work, and has rolled out a slew of guidelines on AI activity. Microsoft, your company, invested $1.5 billion last year in Abu Dhabi's G42 to accelerate AI development, and also kicked off your global AI tour earlier this year in Dubai. Now, these are exciting developments, no doubt, for the country and also for Microsoft. What are some of the interesting initiatives you're seeing from the financial sector in this region? And how do you compare bank digitization here in the Middle East compared to other regions?
Yeah, no, we're really excited about tapping into the forward-thinking view and this idea of innovation driving economic development, and innovation actually driving the ability to actually create an environment that people can come and learn in and actually create value and participate in the economic value creation that's done with tech. And so we're excited about that. As you mentioned earlier, of the 50 years that Microsoft's been in existence, we've been in the UAE for 30. So it's an important region, and we had early visions around learning in this region because of the nature around how government and industries were working together. So we're excited about that. So what's the output of that? Well, the output of that is you have, in the financial services sector industry, you have institutions that are very well positioned with their technology around how they've built it, and how they're moved from older legacy systems to actually how they've moved to the cloud. So this region has moved quite a bit to the cloud in terms of enablement. Because of that, it's allowed them to actually now take advantage of what's happening with generative AI. As I said earlier, right, in order to take advantage of generative AI, you're going to need to be in the cloud, and you're going to need to have a point of view around your data structures if you're going to move to creating an agentic platform, a AI platform that's going to allow you to think about ways you can use it with copilots and agents. And so this region is poised to actually start to show what that value looks like, and start to show what we talk about in our workplace trends index around this notion around our company's really going to fundamentally change, right, with this technology. And I think institutions are trying to figure that out, and where are the areas they're going to focus on to do that, whether it's the servicing channel, or whether it's in the credit and underwriting channel, or whether it's in the user interface channel to actually make these capabilities much more prominent, right, for users, or whether it's going to be used to fundamentally collapse how institutions are set up today. Because, as you know, right, our financial institutions tend to be very siloed.
Yep.
Right, you got your onboarding group, you got your underwriting group, you got your loan group, right? You got your cards team, you got your deposit team, and then we break up customers into these segments, right? You can be a small business customer, you can be a medium business customer, you can be a commercial customer. Nobody on the outside cares about all that, right? As an institution or individual, you don't care what segment you're in, you just want to be served. But think about it, right? If you are an individual and you came in as an individual customer, and then you actually had a business, you'd be on a different platform. And then if you were your company grew in your corporate, you'd be on a different platform. And oh, by the way, with different people serving you.
Yeah.
So I think institutions are going to step back and say, wait a minute, right? If you and I were an individual customer and we grew with that bank, why do I have to have different people, different institutions, different platforms? So I think there's going to be a view around how do I get above all of that siloed nature And I think there's going to be a view around how agents can actually start to actually do some of those processes and collapse them to get you to a view where it's much more simpler around how the institution can understand you and how to serve you and how to actually do it in a proactive way versus a reactive way.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Microsoft also enables a lot of institutions to improve financial inclusion, whether through more accessible cloud services, authority data analytics, or AI. But we still have 1.5 billion adults and about half of SMEs in the world with no or very limited access to formal financial services. I mean, you happen to be on the board of SoFi that started off at Stanford to provide more affordable loans to students. What do you think commercial banks can do to enhance financial inclusion?
I think it's happening with regards to understanding how to get people into a banking institution and then understand how to move them forward right around what they need to do to build credit, understand how to use their money, how to use their money to actually pay for their services, but also think about what they need to put aside for investing. And so that idea of a coach and what an AI-enabled set of capabilities to allow an individual to feel comfortable or a small business owner to feel comfortable to actually engage with something that I can ask questions with at my own pace to understand what I need to do, as opposed to relying on a human all the time to do that, to show me ways and to actually tell me if I've, as an institution, need more working capital because you had order flows come in differently and what I need around that, and give you the ability to think ahead and then to understand that now you've protected yourself or you've understood that you need a different line of credit because you're growing fast or you spent too much money. I think the ability to do that and make people feel comfortable or business owners operating feel comfortable, I think there's just a whole opportunity of capabilities that are going to come out with generative AI to actually get to that. And then you make it accessible because now, and we've seen it in countries like India and areas like Africa and even in the Middle East where the availability and the accessibility to get to those institutions is there because I can get it to it on a mobile phone. And so the idea of a payment vehicle or the ability to, if I actually use payments to actually show that I'm credit worthy to actually get credit or to use ways that I can now become a grow into my banking relationship. We have pockets of that all over. I think the technology is there to do it. And now I think it's going to be on institutions really focusing on how to do it. And I also think it's going to be certain institutions that are going to focus on segments differently too, right? Around, there's going to be institutions that are going to be feel more comfortable going after lower income earning individuals because they feel like they have the technology to manage it.
Correct.
So I see a lot more coming in that space.
And technology will make a big difference in this space.
Yeah.
Now, Microsoft also owns the world's largest professional networking app, LinkedIn, which all of us are part of. And also, of course, Microsoft Teams, that most of us can't live without, especially post-COVID. Bill, what is your view on the future of work? Do you think hybrid and remote work models are here to stay?
I think because of what we went through with COVID and the technologies that supported hybrid work, and now this notion of what generative AI can do with hybrid workers and or the ability to bring in collaboration with what generative AI agents are going to do, I still think that's going to create an opportunity for businesses and organizations to still be very productive with hybrid work models. Some institutions are going to make decisions around that, but I don't think it's going to be because of technology, right? I think the technology supports it. I think it's going to be an individual business decision, right, around how they think they want to create value with their workforces. But I do think it's going to be here to stay, and I think institutions are going to have to determine how they want to take advantage of it or what decisions they want to make around work at home, right? As you know, some large financial institutions in the U.S. have said it's back to work.
Correct.
Some large tech companies in the U.S. have said, nope, you're going to work back to work. But
those what's your policy at Microsoft today?
Our policy is we suggest folks being in the office 2 to 3 days a week, and we see the value of that.
Okay.
We have not said that you've got to come back to work full time or or that you have to do it. But I think functionally, a lot of our employees have realized that being back in the office has been super helpful, right? Around building relationships, understanding how to learn from others, right? Just engaging. You know, you can't replace bumping into, meeting another colleague in a different function or meeting a senior colleague and having a chance to spend 15 minutes with them to learn and to make those connections and to build your network physically. You just can't replace that. So we still encourage that, and we want people to come in. And we'll still kind of monitor it right around how we're seeing, our teams operate and create value.
Changing tracks a bit, Bill. You've been a board member of the U.S. National Black MBA Association. You're also part of the Blacks at Microsoft Forum. Diversity is a hot topic today. How important do you think this is today for organizations and communities globally?
Yeah, it has become a hot topic, but I think the fundamental idea of seeing the value of having diverse thought, to help drive your thinking and to help drive your innovation at the core, I think is powerful, and I think proven out right around getting to the best ideas and the innovation. And when you're a global institution as well, right, where you're serving individuals, companies, and markets around the world, different people's culture, background, you want to have the mindset of having the best and brightest with different points of view, who come from different places and have different thoughts and views. That's where you're fundamentally going to create, I think, the best ideas and the best innovation. And that's really kind of core to our culture at Microsoft. We're very proud of our culture and our mission. And we want to attract the best and brightest, and we're going to continue to do that. And when we attract the best and brightest, we also want to make sure that there's a way for them to actually grow and have the same opportunities, and the merit-based approach to how we actually look at rewarding them. And so that's been fundamental to the growth of the company and how the company's operated for the last 50 years, and it's still going to be at the center of how we operate.
Okay. Now, a question that will be important for my younger listeners. How should the young professionals today prepare themselves in the world of AI? Should learning, working with copilots or AI assistants or developing prompt engineering skills, very important part of the toolkit for working professionals going forward?
Yes.
Okay.
You've got to be curious and be immersive in these technologies, right, around how they can fundamentally think about, how you might do things different. I mean, the idea of not using the power of these technologies to help you come up with better ways to think about ideas, or better ways to construct things, or better way to get at information and knowledge in a quicker way to actually address how you're thinking or to drive your curiosity. You have to be immersive in this, or you're just going to miss out right around what this means. And so if the future is going to be that I'm going to have copilots and assistants available to me, and then the way I use them in a competitive way, that's going to differentiate me and my talent and my value to the organization that I work for, or if I want to be an entrepreneur and differentiate my brand in the market, you've got to understand and use these technologies. I mean, think back, right? It takes years for the value of these new technologies to really play out, right?
Correct.
So when the internet came out, we didn't know exactly what it was going to do, but we see what it did to change the world, right, around what communications and distribution and connectivity meant, right? And things like Google and things like Facebook and others, nobody was thinking about when the internet came out, but that's what was developed, right? When mobile came out, nobody would have thought that you could be able to take a picture of your check and deposit it.
Yeah.
So we're in that phase now with AI, right? We're again, we don't know. We're in the early innings around what it's gonna mean and what the creativity around it is going to generate.
Yeah.
But just like with mobile and the internet, if you're not immersing yourself in it to understand it, you're going to miss out or you're going to fall behind. So you should be learning how to prompt, listening to podcasts, trying out different tool sets, thinking about how you use it at work or thinking about how you use it at home, and having conversations with your friends and family and peers, and hearing your children talk about it, because the young people are going to have completely different views around how to think about it and use it.
Absolutely.
So I think the more you can talk about it and immerse yourself in it, the better.
Okay, Bill, you launched your own podcast series, The Borden Line, last year, and you focus on areas like financial innovation, industry trends. Do you see yourself doing a podcast with an AI agent soon?
Great question. I don't know. I suspect yes, because I do think, and you're going to see more of this, right? The idea of agents collaborating with you in a Teams environment, or agents collaborating with you in a workspace environment is going to occur. So me having a conversation with my assistant as part of my podcast as I interview people could very well be an interesting concept. So.
Absolutely. Let me know when you do that. I'll definitely tune in. But I must confess, though, that for this podcast that we're doing today, I used an AI agent, Perplexity, to help me with the questions.
Cool.
I mean, it's Perplexity, plus, of course, it gives me the basic stuff that I build on it. But it definitely is very, very useful. Go look at every post Bill Borden did in the last 1 year on LinkedIn and tell me some of the key things he's talking about.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
So, stuff like that, it can be done very painstakingly through research, manual research.
Yeah.
But why have the pain when you have a $20 subscription per month to do it for you, right?
Right.
I think there's a lot of value in using these tools to our benefit, as long as we marry it with our own wisdom, our own insights, and some caution.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Yeah.
And look, coming out on this visit to the region, right, I come out to the region to talk with customers, starting in the morning and ending at night.
Correct.
The preparation to actually have those individual customer meetings, right? I use my Copilot to actually review my meeting notes, my briefing notes, to provide summaries, to actually go out and do research and then come back with a summary. I can't tell you
how useful
how wonderful that is.
Wonderful.
To prepare.
Wonderful. So, Bill, time now for some rapid fire questions. And the rule is you can't take more than 10 seconds to think of the answer. Does that work for you?
Okay, we'll make it work.
Let's go. Just about 6 questions, okay? Bill, what's the most significant fintech trend you're watching in 2025?
The use of copilots and agents in my everyday workflow, and how do I extend that to seeing how institutions do it as well.
Okay. What's the one book that you'll recommend to our listeners to read?
One that's a little old because of how I'm watching AI. So I think we're getting to this tipping point that we've been talking about with AI and generative AI. And so the tipping point is that pops into my head. I think Malcolm Gladwell edited that book. So I think we're really at a tipping point here with generative AI.
The Return of the Tipping Point? Is that the book you're talking about?
It's called The Tipping Point.
That's the original one. There's a new one called The Return of the Tipping Point.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which go read that one.
Yeah, I could go read that one. Okay, good. So Tipping Point and The Return of the Tipping Point. Wonderful. If you could change one thing, Bill, in the financial service industry, what would that be?
Acceleration.
Okay. Of innovation.
Of innovation.
The bank of the future, in your mind, is a traditional bank now, a digital bank, a fintech, or a technology company?
A financial retail company.
But which of these do you think will evolve into that future state?
I think a fintech company.
Fintech company?
Yeah, I think the idea of technology to deliver value from a human or business creativity perspective is what banks have to get to.
You are obviously a very heavy user of Copilot and AI agents. What is your best use case in the personal life for AI?
In my personal life?
Yes.
Oh, that's reviewing my to-do lists and my emails to make sure that I get to the things that my wife asked me first to get done.
Okay, final question. What advice would you give to a banking or tech professional starting their careers today?
Think about lean manufacturing approaches, because I think institutions have to think about continuous process improvement and continuous process efficiency capabilities. And the financial service institution doesn't operate that way. Many service institutions operate that way. But if you're going to be in a constant way to be able to collapse processes and improve them now with the technology of use of generative AI and copilots, you got to have a baseline for thinking about that.
Okay. Bill Borden, podcaster and Corporate Vice President of Global Financial Services at Microsoft. Thank you very much for your wisdom and for your insights today. I wish you and Microsoft the very best for the future, and I look forward to seeing you on your next visit to sunny Dubai. And Bill, thank you very much for donating your $1,000 gift card to Dubai Cares. Your contribution, as you know, will go towards helping to educate a lot of underprivileged children.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto as a service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is brought to you by E&, a global technology group.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Intellect Design Arena, driving digital adoption in banking and insurance.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Live Digital Bank, powered by Emirates NBD. Trust and innovation combined.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Let me remind you to visit my giving website, give.moneymajlis.com, to redeem your free $50 gift card towards a charity of your choice. You can redeem it for Dubai Cares, as Bill Borden did, or towards any of the other 5 charities. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay well and do good.